both ends.
All right. Okay, we're going to give it one more minute. We got a few people joining, then we're going to go ahead and get started, everybody. I got to pull up Savannah's very organized agenda. Super impressed. This is legit. Where's that going?
I worked at the state for 5 years.
It shows.
Shows.
That's not a bad thing by any means. Where'd you work at the state, Savannah?
I worked at Healthcare Authority and the Office of Minority and Women Business Enterprises.
Wow.
It's kind of a long one.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Hi, Dawn. Just saying hi to people that I know. Sorry for the other people I don't know. I'm saying
Hi, Mom.
I said Dawn, not Mom.
I know.
Oh, I said hi, Mom.
I know. It just reminded me of, like, you know, somebody on TV for the first time and they're like, hi, Mom.
I know. It's
I don't
funny.
know what to do with my hands.
I know. I feel like weird. It's like head zoomed in.
All right, so man, that chat's blowing up. This is cool. Okay, so we're gonna do our best to keep an eye on the questions coming in through the chat. I think you guys ready to go ahead and get started?
Yeah.
Julie, you good?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks everybody for coming in and checking this out. We are recording this, so we'll be able to post this later on Facebook and other social channels. But we just want to go through real quick and introduce everybody that's on the panel. We put this together just to get out there and answer some questions about things happening locally here in the market. And even nationally with the finances in the stock market. So feel free to ask questions, and we're going to do our best to answer and give certain opinions without, you know, we want to make sure that everybody understands that, you know, there are certain things that we are not an authority on. And so some of the things we say, we're going to be a little safe, but at the same time, we want to be real and we want to add value to this conversation. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm Jason Munoz. I'm with Munoz Home Group at Keller Williams South Sound. Have a real estate team here in the area, and I'm glad that we were able to put this together. So you guys go ahead.
Hello, guys. I'm Savannah with Abbey Realty. Thanks so much, Jason, for putting all this together. I'm excited to see what questions we get, and please keep the questions coming. It'll make this so much more exciting.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm Julie. I'm a mortgage loan officer with Fairway Independent Mortgage and general nerd of all things finances.
Julie's got the best logo ever.
Yeah. So I'm Chase Munoz. I run Rainier Capital Investments. It's an investment advisory firm that's licensed in the state of Washington.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So I'm going to rely on you guys to help me keep an eye on the chat. If you see any good questions in there, or any questions in there, let's make sure that, you know, we try to answer those the best we can. So Savannah, you got the agenda in front of you, I assume?
I do.
Keep looking down, so it probably doesn't look very good on camera.
No worries, no worries. Cool. So do you want me to talk to well, I guess, do we have questions? Hold up. We've got a question from Alicia Brown. Hi, Alicia. To Julie, do you think interest rates will continue to fall, or should people be locking in?
I think rates are, first of all, disclaimer on this, just so everybody's aware, the market as it stands right now is acting erratically in a way that is unprecedented. And so everything that we've watched for and all the indicators that typically give us insight as to whether rates are going to go up and down everything's been flipped on its head. Regardless of the indicators, the market is acting very erratically, sometimes going actually the polar direction that we thought it would go in reaction to something happening. So I'm just going to preface anything that I say with that. Even the top experts on the mortgage bond securities market and the bond market in general do not know how to predict what's happening. They're doing the best they can, but everyone is pretty thrown by it. So, a disclaimer. However, I personally am, depending on the loan type, I'm floating some, which means I'm waiting for the drop on a few. There are certain loan programs, and by that I mean conventional or FHA or VA, that are still trending down. So, you know, and it depends too on time frame. If you want to close very, you know, if I don't think we have enough time to wait for rates to move, then I'm going to lock soon. But all that rambling to say, rates are great right now. I mean, historically, they're still historically low. They're not what we saw a week and a half ago or whenever that was. I haven't slept very much, but you know, they're not that low, and frankly, they're not gonna probably get that low ever again. And in anytime soon. I can't predict the far future, but anytime soon, I don't see that happening again.
Cool. Good to know. We're going to probably talk a little more about that too as we keep going.
Hopefully, was that even helpful? I felt rambly. Was that clear?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, Alicia says that was great. So
okay. Alicia, you're so supportive.
I can't imagine Alicia ever like insulting anybody though. She's just,
I know.
She's like, that sucked. That was horrible. You rambled.
Exactly.
Kiss me. Okay. Yeah. I don't see any other questions.
Jason, since we don't have a question, maybe you could talk to a little bit about how like the stay-at-home order from the governor's impacting. I know we've gotten some guidance from MLS and realtors and other groups on kind of what that means for real estate. I don't know if you want to like talk to that a little bit.
Yeah. You mean as far as what we can and can't do as agents?
Yeah.
So an update was sent out by the MLS. For those of you that don't know, MLS is our multiple listing service, and they're where we send all of our listings so they can get out to the internet and out to the world. And for some reason, they also tell us what to do all the time. But the update they sent out was this morning, and there's certain things like we get some questions about I'm under contract right now, but appraisal hasn't been done, or I'm going under contract and I haven't done my home inspection yet. And some of those answers aren't very clear, but we have gotten some answers. And Savannah, I know you've experienced some different things too, so feel free to piggyback off of anything I say here, or even correct me if you know I'm wrong. But appraisals, from my understanding, is certain lenders, depending on who your lender is, may allow a desk or a drive-by appraisal. So, you know, without having any interaction with anybody, you can drive by the house, look at the comps online, and submit an appraisal that way. My understanding is that on the file and the property would allow that. So I don't think appraisers are completely shut down, but what it did say in that update this morning was that appraisers are not allowed to do in-person, in-home appraisals as of right now. That may change, but as of today, that is the rule. Did you hear anything different?
Nope. I was actually on the phone with an appraiser this morning, and we were trying to figure out how we were going to do this. And so, but it was essentially that, you know, to see if they could basically get a permission or approval to do a desk appraisal, you know, and we'll have to kind of operate, you know, with some of those unknowns, at least for a while.
As far as I know, on the lending side, from what I've been told, the only transactions that are able, that desk appraisals are a possibility right now are conventional loans. Any government loans, they're not allowing desk appraisals. However, that could change, and it may depend on the lender, but I believe it's an investor rule. So yeah, that's about the extent of what I got.
Okay, this is a VA loan. So that's
driven by the lender or the underwriter, Julie, do you think, depending on what company?
I'm sorry?
Do you think that'll be driven by the lender or the underwriter at that lending company? Or
No.
a straight up government guideline?
It's a guide. So when they announced that it was possible for conventional loans, it's because the main investors, and not just any conventional loan, but specifically Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, are allowing desk appraisals on their conventional loans. That's all we know thus far. We haven't heard anything from any of the other ones, so it's, as far as we know, it's still, there's no change. They're going to be required for the files they're required on.
Looks like we got a question. Amy Hill's definitely thinking outside the box here, asking if appraisers could do a video call with a homeowner.
I asked that. Actually, I asked the appraiser if he could FaceTime with the seller and do a walkthrough, and he said no. He said no. And he wasn't going for it.
Countertops are going to look like granite and they're going to lie. I mean,
yeah. I mean, he said we have the photos in the MLS, but it's more of just what, you know, the lenders require. So,
okay.
But that's a good, you know, I think though, depending on how this, like how long this lasts and all of that looks, I think we're going to see a lot more creativity though in figuring out how to accomplish things, you know?
Yeah.
Unfortunately not on that one, I don't think.
And I think, you know, building on that, what you just said there, it seems like we always find a way, right? The world changes, things we can and can't do, and then a solution presents itself and we always find a way. So even though that's not allowed right now, depending on how long this thing is drug out, you know, you may see that some of those restrictions loosen up later on as people start to think about some of those different options, people that make decisions like that.
So we had a question about the new form, the force majeure form in the MLS, and you know, are we using it, and what exactly is it? I guess I can speak to that one for a second real quick, and then Jason, if you have anything to add. So the 22 FM is the force majeure form released by the MLS. I guess it would have been mid last week or so. And essentially what it is it's an addendum for us to include in either new contracts or get added into existing contracts that gives us a bit of contractual leeway, if you will, to extend a contract or request additional time due to unforeseen delays that aren't based on, you know, basically things outside of the control of the buyer and seller. Yeah. So, for example, last week when we got this form, we didn't know if there was going to be a stay-at-home order or how that would impact things. So with inspections, for example, being something that cannot occur during this 2-week period, it allows or gives the kind of flexibility to get extensions on time frames that otherwise we wouldn't have a mechanism to get an extension on. Yeah. I've definitely been using it. You know, and I think this is kind of like one of those things that we may see evolve like after we get through this virus is, you know, there's always the potential for something unforeseen to happen in the future. And this will probably be a pretty standard form to kind of use on an ongoing basis. I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't, just not, you know, you can control things you don't know. So anyway, Jason.
Litigation around that would be a blast, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because what constitutes an unforeseen circumstance, you know, in the future. But
you say, well, in the form that we have that we're using, it's specific to COVID-19.
Yeah.
Right.
Brokerage and the attorneys for our brokerage drafted up a very similar addendum with similar language, but it's specific to COVID-19, and there is no language for anybody to walk out on the transaction. So we've been using that form. I think I've probably been dealing with it a little differently than you have, Savannah. We we are currently attempting all of our pending transactions to get those force majeure forms signed around by all parties. And I just got an update from Teresa on our team to let me know that one of the builders is refusing to sign it. So I don't know if they're refusing to sign it because they don't understand it, or they're just refusing to sign it because they're a builder, and builders are difficult sometimes. But I think the biggest thing that's important, and this leads into one of the questions in the panel, is if you extend and you have that force majeure form signed around, if you extend by 8 days, 10 days, you're closing because you can't close it, extends all the other timelines inside the transaction. So say, for instance, a very good example would be a final walkthrough. One of the MLS updates this morning was we are not supposed to be doing final walkthroughs with buyers right now. And so if you can't do a final walkthrough and your buyer wants to do a final walkthrough, that is a condition inside the contract that the buyer reserves the right to do that. So if we can't do that right now, force majeure form would come into effect. You'd get an extension on your contract, and then you would have up to 3 days to the new closing date to do your buyer walkthrough. So to answer your question, that how are we accomplishing final walkthroughs right now for closing? Right now, we're not. The only way I could see that happening would be the seller doing a live, with the buyer on the other end and walking through it. But if I was the buyer, to protect myself, I don't know if I would want to do that or feel comfortable doing that. So the short answer to your question, Catherine, right now we're not doing final walkthroughs. And if the buyer insists on doing a final walkthrough, which we do recommend, we're asking the other party for an extension right now so that they can fulfill that part of the contract. What do you think, Savannah?
Yeah, I memean, it's tough. Like with the MLS guidance that came out this morning too, it's really tough to even figure out key exchanges. There's a lot of things. And I mean, it really just comes down to what the comfort level is for the buyer in the case of the final walkthrough. I mean, I have some buyers who are fine with it. Maybe it was a vacant house to begin with. There's no reason to think that something has changed since they last saw it. So they've chose to move forward. In other cases, people may be asking for an extension.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it really does depend on what the client wants to do. Sometimes I don't need it.
And someone may be in a hotel, and I have a client like that, and it's like, the most critical thing for them is to be able to have a home to self-isolate in, so it just depends.
Yep. Is that all the questions we have in the chat right now?
I could type this, but I guess I'll just ask you, Chase. I have a question. So I know, like I was saying earlier in our prep call here, that I downloaded Robinhood and I've been obsessed with like tracking everything. But what could you maybe say just like broadly about what you're seeing in like the stock market? I mean, I've heard on the news and stuff it's been going up, but what would you say generally, I guess?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting just to kind of give a brief overview. This for me is my third market crash. I'm going through this one. I went through 2008, and then I went through the dot-com bubble before that. So there's differences with each one of those, but there are also similarities that we run into. So what I'm seeing with this one is, what the differences are with this one is that we've never dropped this quick, this fast before. So that is one of the big differences. Having said that, that could maybe anticipate that we hit a bottom faster than what we normally traditionally would have. And I'm not saying that we have hit the bottom. I'm just saying we've fallen pretty fast. The market is already starting to rebound somewhat. From the low point that it hit, it's rebounded about 20% as of today. For me personally, there's still a lot of question marks out there in terms of the financial data. I mean, because basically you got an entire economy shutting down for 30 to 60 days. So in that time, companies aren't making money, houses aren't being sold, no one's going to work. So there's still some financial data that has to come out that we're not going to see for the next 30 to 60 days minimum before we can really judge as to what's going to happen in the future. Right now, I would say this, though. There's probably not going to be a better time to get started, if you're not already in, to get started, than probably right now. This is, we really haven't seen a market condition like this in literally 10 years. So if this is your, 1 in 10 year opportunity to really get in at good prices, it's something that I would consider, because the market is still down about, give or take 25% from its last high point. So you're getting in at a 25% discount. Historically, what we see is we tend to see drops, we'll tend to see a spike, and then we can see another drop after that. And I think that's collectively people that are looking in the market, that's what they're wondering if it's going to happen, is if this is a short-term spike, which isn't a bad thing. It's just kind of following the pattern. And then we possibly get another drop after this. So that's really the question mark that we're kind of looking at right now.
Interesting. Okay, so it looks like we got a question about changes related to like new construction.
Yeah.
Jason, do you want to touch on that, or do you want me to start on that one?
I think you and I are both experiencing different things. Like I said earlier on our prep call, the house next to me, the plumbers were in there today. And I think we've both gotten different updates from builders. So the last update that I got was that builders are not, residential building is not considered essential right now, according to the governor's order. So builders that are building single family homes right now are not supposed to be building. What you may see today or over the next few days, you may see plumbers, electricians, whoever, framers, construction people inside these homes that are being built. But what I'm being told is what they're doing is they're going in and they're buttoning up the site. So because they're prepping it for no one being there. So maybe they're grabbing their tools or they're covering things up. They don't want to get wet, who knows? But that's what I'm being told is happening now. I think most builders are probably going to comply with that order, but I mean, it's anybody's guess at this point. What are you hearing, Savannah?
Yeah, and even since our talk earlier, I did get talked to another builder, but it does sound like, yeah, anything for new residential construction is on hold unless it's to preserve like the structural integrity or like security of the home and get equipment and stuff. So, if you are either in contract or looking at new construction, I think you could see, a little bit of a delay there for a while.
Yeah, and also on that same topic as far as repairs and construction, contractors that are doing repair work for 35R or inspection repairs, so people that are under contract and buyers asked, I want that leaky faucet fixed. Those kind of repairs, they are on hold right now. They are not supposed to be out there doing those repairs unless they are structural in nature, or some kind of safety hazard. So if you've got a repair, agreed upon because you're under contract with the seller, and the repair is to paint the fascia boards, that's not getting done right now. Okay. I don't see any other questions. Work would be allowed in emergency. Yeah. So I want to maybe push forward back to the agenda. What do we got, Savannah?
All right, so maybe Julie, do you want to talk about maybe what's going, I think you kind of spoke to mortgage rates a little bit. I don't know if you want to add to that or talk maybe about like the down payment assistance program and how that's being affected right now, like a zero down payment assistance?
Yeah, so it's the Washington State Housing Finance Commission, who provides down payment assistance, is still fully operational and not a whole lot of changes on their end. The only thing that they have changed is that you can now request a waiver for the inspection, since we can't get inspections done, because with those transactions you have to get an inspection, so they're waiving that. Also, they're not allowing in-person down payment assistance classes right now. So they're offering the online version for only $25 as opposed to $50. Another agent in town is going to, and I are discussing the potential of doing a Zoom version of our first time buyers class. So those are a couple factors. Also, it has throughout the day been discussed that, and yesterday, that many lenders are not taking new applications for down payment assistance loans at this time. A handful of big companies. Some are additionally not taking any new applications for government loans at all. So, and they're all different. So if someone is looking for that type of thing, you can call your loan officer and ask. Every lender is going to be pulling different things. There's not a lot of products out there that are subprime loans that aren't very common, but you would see like a bank statement loan or something like that. Those are not being offered right now. Jumbo loans are being dialed back. A lot of they're just faucet off. Not a lot of jumbo lenders with a bunch of lenders. So a lot is happening where they're just having to pull back for a lot of reasons. But as far as rates are concerned, right now, just to back up to the initial question, they've been very volatile. They've behaved in a way that has confused every expert that I have been able to find and, read their thoughts. But all that's to be said, hopefully rates will continue to drop. However, if you were to lock a loan today, it's not a bad rate. So to anyone who is having to lock their loans right now, and I can't speak to every single file. I don't know what your interest rate is, but if your interest rate is in the high 3s or low 4s, you can bummed out because of the rates that were available a few weeks ago. Don't be bummed out. That's a low rate. That's a good rate, and that's about what we're going to probably return to after all of this is over. So, again, who knows? But I just wanted to kind of throw that out there after my last comments, just so if anyone is in the process of purchasing right now and they're bummed about they're not generally that bad. People are just overreacting because of how low they were, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Before we go back to Amy's question, I don't know, Catherine Johnson asked, can you speak about Fairway's position on RON signings? Is Fairway considering allowing fully digitally signed and notarized documents in Washington?
Yes. It depends again on the loan type. So a lot of these rules, and I'll just make a little side note about this. There's a lot of rules that are determined by the companies, and then there's some rules that are determined by the investors who actually fund these or purchase these loans. Okay, so this is one of them. The remote online notary signings are, I believe, cleared for conventional right now with Fairway. I don't know yet if that's the case. It's definitely not the case on bond loans. If you have down payment assistance, you have to sign. But I'm not 100% certain on the government loans. For sure, you can conventional though.
Interesting. Okay.
Can we learn what RON stands for?
Remote online notary, I believe. Hopefully that's correct.
I have no idea.
That's my guess. So hopefully. Yeah, good call, Savannah. Oh, good. Okay. After I said it, I was like, there's a possibility that I'm fake.
Got to get an escrow or title person on here.
Right.
All right. Going back real quick before we lose track here, Amy, on your question, unless it was called out by an appraiser and the repair was needed for financing, is that right? I mean, I think essentially you can get any kind of like health and safety, if you will, repair done to your home. So whether that's identified through an inspection or just because you all of a sudden have something come up at home, but kind of like what Jason was saying with like fascia boards or like more cosmetic type things would not necessarily fall into it. I know something I've been doing is as much as possible just trying to negotiate, even in contracts where maybe we agreed on repairs, but seeing, okay, well, given these changes, is there a way we can apply a credit or, you know, handle the repairs in a different way with some of the limitations to get folks out
And
there.
in some cases, you know, and again, this will depend on the lender, but in some cases and in some loan types, you can give the appraiser or the lender photos of completed work if it's cosmetic. Obviously, if it has to be viewed by a licensed professional, that's different. But if it's, you know, if they called you for painting or something that can easily be photographed, sometimes you are whoever anybody can go photograph it from outside the house and then give that back, and sometimes that will suffice.
Now, I think probably the biggest thing is just finding a contractor that's willing to go out there and do the repair right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Find anybody, can't get it done.
Okay, another one for you, Julie. How many loans are you seeing requesting extensions? Also, are you seeing a lot of buyers being affected with income and loans falling out yet, or is it too soon to tell?
Okay. So extensions we're seeing are, I am seeing some extensions. A couple examples would be USDA loans. I know not a lot of people do a lot of USDA, but I tend to. And USDA is the one that we can't underwrite completely ourselves. We have to send the file to USDA for their final approval on the loan, and they have to review everything. So they're back up. So their turn times are very slow right now. So that USDA files are being, I'm seeing some extensions. And then also just anytime there's a final inspection when things need to be taken care of. But there's been, I have a handful right now that have been extended, not a lot, but you know, just not a horrific amount of time, but definitely extended due to not being able to find anybody who will go out and get the work done. And
See a
then
lot more extensions in the coming weeks once things can't happen now.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Buyers being affected with income and loans falling out. So the stance that my understanding is, the general stance is that we have to comply with everything we already do. So and for you guys, what we already do is at the beginning of a loan application, we verify employment. Well, we do it again about 7 days prior to close, 7 to 8 days prior to close. And it can't be any sooner than that. In fact, it goes about a week before closing. That's when they call and verbally verify. If we are calling and verbally verifying that someone is employed and they confirm that, then the loan can close just fine. If we call and are told that they were laid off, then the loan cannot close just fine. And they're not, and that's that. I mean, it's so it'll depend on the situation, because I know a lot of people, the terms of their employment have simply changed. They're not unemployed. But there are people who are, you know, even just partially unemployed during this time, where it is going to cause some issues. So my answer basically is, it depends on where you are in your loan process and what your situation is like with employment. But if you are a you know, a bartender at a restaurant, for instance, and we call to verify you're still employed there, and someone answers and says, no, you've been laid off, then unfortunately that's what we're facing right now. And it's caused a lot of problems. And I mean, it's horrible, but it is what it is. And sometimes, you know, depending on the relationship between the buyers and the sellers, that's not to say that it ruins the transaction if people can come to an agreement that when you're back to work, we can resume and close, you know, because it's not like it's done forever if all parties agree. So because they're not fired, they're just laid off because of everything. Nobody can do anything right now. So there are ways to get around it.
So quick question, because there's another question in there, but answer as quick as you can. If someone gets laid off, they go on unemployment, they get employed again, and they get their job back, is that going to affect their ability to get pre-approved for a loan or get back into the game, so to speak?
No. You mean delay it?
Well, let's say that they're not under contract. Let's say that someone had a job, you know, and yesterday they got laid
And they've
off.
been pre-approved already.
What's that?
And they've been pre-approved already. They're just kind of.
No, they haven't been pre-approved.
Oh, okay.
Brand new buyer. They're working, they get laid off, but they were intending on applying for a loan, you know, in April and buying a home this spring. So get laid off employment for 3 weeks, and then everything goes somewhat back to normal. They get their job back, they're working again. They come to you, they apply for a loan. You're going to see that break in employment.
Yep.
Is that going to affect their ability to get a pre-approval, do you think?
No.
Okay.
No, absolutely not. The only thing that it could affect, because income is calculated and documented a certain way. I mean, if you have a very straightforward income and you're going back to the same job, and the terms of your employment have changed, we're not going to fault you for that. However, if you're self-employed, if you are commission only, I mean, there's certain pays that are calculated on based on year-to-date numbers. So I'm not sure if people are going to be discounted for that reason. So say, you know, if you're self-employed and you make $5,000 a month, well, and then you didn't for the month of March, are we going to then look at when we calculate your year-to-date pay, are you going to be shortchanged for your monthly income? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because that's how we calculate that. So I would think that, you know, they would come out with some logical rules that say year to date without that time. But yeah, that's my long answer for
Long answer after I asked for it.
affect it. Yeah, it shouldn't affect it.
All right. Thanks, Julie.
All right, Chase, you got a question. What types of stocks are you seeing most people investing in right now?
You know, it's been really it's been different across the board. There's a lot of companies that people are looking at that they previously, you know, wouldn't look at because they're just looking at how far those positions have fallen and they're excited about the price. Due to better regulations, I can't mention any specific companies because it would come off as a recommendation, and I can't do that without having at least a one-on-one meeting. But for the most part, and you can tell just even from the last 3 days, most stocks have been gaining back in value. Like I said, I mean, after hitting that bottom pretty much on Monday, the market's upswung about 20% right now. And there's a lot of stocks that have taken advantage of that. So it's kind of been everywhere across the board. I mean, whether it's technology or financials or healthcare stock, obviously that's a really big one right now. What I can say is spread the wealth. You know, if you're ever looking at buying stocks, you know, you're never looking at just one. Never just look at one particular industry. You know, spread the wealth. You do kind of want to spread it about, especially at a time like right now. You know, nobody's really spending money at restaurants. Nobody's going out to bars, things like that. But, you know, people are still paying their power bill. People are still paying their utility bills. So even really safe companies like electric companies and water companies, they're even gaining a lot of traction here in the market right now.
Okay. So I had a question for you, and then just put that question.
Yeah.
Okay, so with like everything going on, I don't know if you can like recommend or at least like kind of talk about like the pros and cons between like individual stocks versus like mutual funds or ETF. Like
I was going to ask that.
Yeah.
I have a feeling, like read your mind.
Yeah. And that's the trick. You know, everybody gets excited when we hit one of these downturns because they want to buy stock and that's great. I never really want to discourage investing in the market, but I am going to encourage someone to take an approach of either buying an index, which, you know, follows like the S&P 500 or the Russell 2000, or buying an ETF, which has maybe 100 or 200 different companies in it. So you get a diversified portfolio, especially if you don't have a lot of money to invest. You know, if you're just looking at where you have a few $100s or even a few $1,000s, you can't buy that many stocks with that. You know, as an example, you know, someone wants to buy Amazon. Well, Amazon's $2,000 a share. It's very expensive stock, but you can buy a portfolio that has Amazon already in it. So the benefit I'm usually going to say is, hey, especially if you're getting started, go the ETF route. Stands for Exchange Traded Fund. the index route. Mutual funds, there's nothing wrong with them. I'm just not as in favor of them anymore because they can be a little expensive and you have more control when you're buying ETF typically. So for my clients, I usually gravitate towards that space as the ETF space or just basic indexing. Yeah.
Cool.
Um,
Other questions?
So while we're on finance, I wanted to ask Chase, do you have any general advice for people that are looking at their stock trading accounts that they were planning on using for retirement, or looking at their 401k and freaking out? General advice for those individuals?
Yeah. So one is don't freak out, and I know that's really tough to do right now. But here's the thing: is that when we hit these, and I'll just call them bumps, even though I don't mean to downplay it at all, they typically do not last very long. And here's the thing: every time we hit one of these bear markets, or every time we hit a recession, it is immediately, and I mean immediately, followed by a screaming bull market that lasts for years. Sometimes these bull markets last for 10 years, like we saw what just happened in 2008. We really didn't have many negative years from 2009 on to 2019. So, if you're just getting in, you're getting in at a great time. If you're already in or you're at your retirement account and you're kind of freaking out, I can understand that. Some strategies I would look at is in every 401k or retirement account, there's usually a rebalancing feature that really helps during these times. So what it'll do, it'll kind of buy back in things that you've lost money in because you're buying them at lower prices at that point. And so you get to magnify your rebound when that rebound does happen. And this is where I'm going to say that this time isn't any different than any other time. A rebound's going to happen. I'm actually really impressed with the steps that the government and other organizations are taking to funnel money into the economy. There was a lot of screw-ups in 2008 that magnified the problems of trying to get this money out there. We've learned some lessons since then, and we're not making those same mistakes. We're directly funneling money to people, to business owners. Some of you may have just recently read, I think it's Wells Fargo, Citibank, US Bank, and a couple others just suspended mortgage payments for 4 months. So people can skip 4 months worth of mortgage payments now. And it's a handful of banks that are doing that. And I think that's probably going to roll out maybe a little bit more. Can't say for sure, but when I look at Wells Fargo, one of the biggest mortgage lenders in the country, they're just telling you, hey, skip 4 months. We understand. And there's a handful of other banks that are doing that. So all of those are actually really positive and good signs to me, right now. And I'd also want to point out that prior to all this, we were set to have a pretty good year in the market. Profits were good, corporate taxes were low. It's a presidential election year. Normally markets are positive by an average of like 7 or 8% or more during a presidential election year. This time could be different. But I'm definitely seeing a lot of positive signs that economically we're going to be able to pull through this pretty quickly once everything kind of just settles down.
Great. Okay. We got any questions? No? Chase, I was going to ask you, is there anything different that's happening in your world that's affecting your ability to service your clients, or are you pretty virtual at this point?
No, I'm pretty virtual, fortunately. I mean, with technology now, email, Zoom, screen sharing, that's one of the things that's actually probably I've been able to handle this a little bit better than we could in 2008. We just didn't have the resources like what we do now. So there's nothing that's really getting in the way. And from what I can see in the markets, at least, that initial fire sale panic kind of thing is kind of abated right now. The markets are moving at what I would call a normal pace right now. That could change in a given moment, but it's definitely not like what it was a couple weeks ago. Kind of like what Julie was saying about interest rates. Hey, what we saw back then was kind of a freak of nature. I don't expect that to happen again. I'm kind of thinking that way about market movements now. That was just a really panic time. I don't know if it's really going to go back to, 2,000 and 3,000 point swings a day.
Yeah, and it's correct. Like what happened back then, we just got a question, I'll get to that. What happened back then in 2008 there's so many different factors that led into that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a surplus of inventory. There were people over positioning their equity position in their home and taking out equity loan. There was a lot of different things going on that led to that whole crisis, and it was caused by our industry and what was going on. And right now, what's happening is not a result of anything we've done in the real estate industry, the housing market, or mortgages. Like you said, a lot has been learned. And even if we're in a recession, what we've seen historically is that for the most part, when we're in a recession, 3 out of the last 5 recessions, home values have risen by anywhere from 4 to 7%.
Mm-hmm.
The only 2 where they didn't it was only down by like 2%. And then the other one was obviously the big crash in 2008 where values dropped by 20%. So if you go all the way back to 1980, you can look at those last 5 recessions, you can see that home values don't typically decrease during this time frame.
Yeah. And that's a good thing that I like to point out, what you said about houses. A recession does not mean the market is losing value in my world. When I look back at previous recessions, half of recessions actually occurred during increasing markets, during what we would call a bull market. So a recession itself doesn't necessarily mean, hey, we're losing money or our homes are losing value. It just means basically, hey, the country itself has fallen in GDP. And that doesn't necessarily mean that people aren't making money or your home's losing value.
I think it's important to clarify some of those terms that are thrown out there, and people hear the word recession, they go, everything's going to you know what, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that we talked about earlier on our prep call was, it was released a couple of weeks ago that rates were low, right? And Julie, you were talking about this earlier, and it didn't necessarily mean that the Fed had dropped anything to do with mortgage rates. You want to explain that real quick?
Yeah, I mean, the simplified version of that is just that the Fed lowered the rate on short-term lending, okay? And it has absolutely nothing to do with mortgages or the bond market.
Yeah.
So the bummer is, I wish you can't use an ambiguous term like rates when our economy is full of rates of all different kinds that often don't, they don't do the same things, they don't react the same way. So it's very, very confusing. So I think it's truly just a lack of education from the media to even just simply remark what the Fed rate is. I mean, and just to educate people, because obviously everybody was inundated, everyone in the mortgage industry was inundated with text messages and phone calls and emails and DMs about this 0% rate thing. And so yeah, they're apples and oranges, and they can influence each other. The stock market and the bond market, they can influence each other, absolutely, and have historically. Like if one does something, we can typically know how the other will react. But this period, like I said before, things aren't reacting like they ever have before. So typically when the stock market does poorly, we see a decrease in mortgage interest rates. And that has not been the case. Things have been just wonky as all get out. I mean, nothing's making any sense. Up is down. And so, and Chase mentioned the volatility of watching the market shift throughout the day. We typically see, I mean, in a calm market, we see mortgage interest rates vary maybe 20 basis points a day. Anywhere from like 5 to 30 would be kind of, and right now they're varying in hundreds of basis points a day, up and down, all throughout the day. we just get alerts constantly, up, down, up. I mean, it's very dramatic. And so, you know, that really speaks to the volatility and to the inability to really predict it very well. But we can see the trend is going down. Okay, so while we may be going like this, it's going like this. So we can see that the rates are going back down, probably to where, hopefully to where we were before all of this happened.
Yeah. And so when they lowered the rate down to 0 or whatever that number was on short-term loans, what they were really talking about was things like auto loans, personal loans, credit cards, maybe credit cards, I don't know credit cards, but definitely not mortgage rates.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So Dan, we have a question in there. You want to take a stab at that?
Sure. So the questions are you seeing an increase in listings at all? So, I mean, that's a tough one. I would say generally speaking, we're coming up on this kind of springtime season where you're going to start to see more listings, you know, get more homes get listed. But there's still overall very much a shortage of inventory of homes on the market to meet the demand of folks looking to purchase a home in the area. So, I mean, I'm not looking at the numbers right now, but I would say, you know, at least in the next 2 weeks, I don't think you're going to see many homes be listed, given kind of the current dynamics of not being able to have photographers out, lock boxes put on, signs installed, those kinds of things. So I think you may see a little bit of a pause, but I mean, I actively have clients who are going to wait this, you know, either we listed last week and we're going to market the home through virtual tours, photos, or we're going to pick right back up as soon as, you know, we can kind of get back safely into showing homes and listing homes and everything. So, you know, I think this will be kind of like a little blip as far as, I mean, the people who live here and are looking to buy here are largely, you know, you've got a lot of military, a lot of state workers, a lot of people who really, once we get past this or through this, and again, it's safe to go forward with everything, are gonna, I think, look to move forward with their home purchasing or selling, you know. So I don't see it really being different than how, you know, with or without what we've seen with the virus going on. It's, you know, kind of just what would have been expected. Jason?
Yeah, you know, we had 2 listings go live this week, and you know, rushed to get them on the. Teresa did a lot of work rushing to get those on the market yesterday before the whole shelter order was in effect, because we were just trying to maybe squeeze in a few showings. Normally we wouldn't do that because we want to hold it open and we want to get it as much exposure as possible. But knowing that we weren't going to be able to hold it open, we weren't going to be able to show it after last night, we got them on the market as quick as we could with limited photos. But one of them, you know, we had a virtual tour, a 3D virtual tour included in that, so people can still virtually walk through it. I don't know if I'm seeing an increase in listings. I know that our listing pipeline looked healthy before this all happened 2 weeks ago, and that listing pipeline hasn't changed. Maybe the day we're going on market has changed, but none of those people have called and said, I'm not selling. So I don't have any issues there. As far as buyers are concerned, the only thing that's slowing down from a buyer's side is just our ability to show them a home. There are plenty of virtual solutions out there for buying and selling a home. We can do electronic signings. There are 3D virtual tours available for a lot of listings online. We can, once we're allowed to leave our homes again, even if you feel uncomfortable going into a home or being around other people and we're still practicing social distancing, we can do virtual showings. So we have solutions to continue to buy and sell homes in this market. And I'm not seeing, and nor I'm not predicting, and nor should I predict any kind of slowdown. I just see, kind of like you said, Savannah, this is going to be kind of a little bit of a blip. And what we're doing right now actively is we are just calling everybody we know and asking them how they're doing. It's not a sales call. It's not a real estate call. It's how you doing with all this. And is there anything we can do? And, you know, I have a client that her husband's overseas right now. They're getting ready to list their home. And I know she's at home with 2 kids. And so I just called and said, hey, you know, do you need anybody to go to the store for you? Like, just little stuff like that, because I think that's what's important right now, is just being real people with each other. And there's only so many things we can do in our business. And we want to do those things, at a high level, but we also want to connect with the people we know and make sure that they know we're here, not just for real estate. We'll be here in 2 weeks when we can leave our homes again, but we're here now. And if there's anything we can do, let us know. We've been making those calls.
Looks like we got a couple of questions. Did you see that?
I did not.
I didn't.
The Q&A button.
Q&A?
Oh, let's see here.
Over there, I was going to the chat.
This would be a good question for Chase.
Pay off or invest.
Okay, and I get this question a lot, and here's the best answer I can formulate. You want to figure out a way to do both, because it's a great time to invest, but you also need to pay off your debt. A lot of clients come to me with this question because they'll have saved up, you know, some amount of money, and they're like, okay, but I have this credit card debt, or I want to pay this down. I work with them to figure out a way to do both, because you do want to do both. We kind of get into this panic mode where we get tunnel vision, so we can only focus on one thing at a time. And this is one of those situations where, no, you want to take a step back and figure out how to do both. And if you can't, obviously, you know, there's people that can help you. I can help you with that. But whenever I get asked that question, I'm always like, let's figure out a way to do both. And you're going to feel better in the end, because now you killed 2 birds with 1 stone, essentially. The same pile of money you use to pay off debt and you use to invest.
Chase, don't you have financial planning tools and software for people? Like, sometimes that stuff is really impactful when you can see it visually. Like, if I do this and this over this amount of time, this will be the result. I know you have that solution available.
Yeah, one of the solutions I use with my customers, it's financial planning software that, I mean, it basically does everything. It'll do projections for retirement planning. It's really good for debt management, because it'll show you which cards you need to pay off first. For student loans, it'll actually, if you input your student loans, it'll tell you whether or not they can be forgiven. It'll also kind of price it out to say, okay, if I paid an extra $500 a month towards my debt, how quickly would it be paid off? How much money would I save? Which ones do I need to do first?
It's really cool software.
What's that?
It's really cool software.
Yeah, and the other thing I like about it too is it'll actually track there's a lot of apps that do this, but it'll track your spending. So, because the biggest problem I see with debt is not so much the debt, it's the spending. And if you don't fix your spending, you're going to pay off your debt, but then the spending is just going to rack it back up again. And
you're saying that we should do a lot of online shopping right now. If we had
yeah. You got to go to the root of the problem. Okay. You know, and typically from what I can see, it's usually the spending. So pay off your debt, but also go back to your spending. And that app really helped me. It was like, okay, like I know when I loaded my stuff in, I was like, all right, I spent like $1,200 on restaurants. Probably needed to cut that down a little bit. You know?
Well, and then if you're thinking about it logically, obviously attack your spending first, because if you do, you might find all the money laying there, you know, not spending it to pay your debt.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's when you see it laid out. I mean, there's people that are scared, they don't want to look at it, but it's like, hey, if you don't want to look at it, you're not confronting probably the underlying issue, you know. And I'm just being straight with someone and say, hey, you got to go back and look at your spending, especially if you've gotten into the habit where you've racked up some debt, paid it off, but then 3 to 5 years later, you have kind of the same debt. It's like, okay, I can look at that, and it's not so much the debt, it's the spending. So tackle both, invest and tackle the debt, but go back and look at your spending. That's the first thing I'm always going to encourage someone to do.
Yeah, and you know, some of the advice we're getting right now is, you know, cut expenses. And some people on this have heard this before, but you know, one of the easiest things you can do is print out your bank statement from last month and get, you know, a couple different color markers and go through that thing line by line and look at any recurring expenses or things that you spent money on and go, can I live without that? Can I live without that for 3 months or 6 months, or do I really need this? Whatever it is, your Hulu subscription, or you need to be subscribed to Hulu, Netflix, Disney, Apple Plus, and cable. You need all those things. No one can watch that much TV, not even me. So, go through with a red marker and just mark out all that stuff that you can cancel. And then put yellow lines over the things that are questionable, and then put green lines over the things you absolutely have to have. And if you do that line by line with your bank statement, you might find some opportunity in there where you just freed up $100 to $300 a month, and $300 a month over a 12-month period, $3,600. I mean, you probably have a credit card with that kind of balance on it.
Yeah.
And I would too. I would even back on that and say I would do it quarterly for people who, because nowadays it's so easy to fall into subscriptions, like you just mentioned, subscriptions. And I can't tell you how many times I meet people who didn't even remember they had a subscription that they signed up for a year ago with charging their card every month. It is so common. And so I would even quarterly just check in. You never know if you got in on a free trial for something and then all of a sudden you're being charged. That amount of money I think that could be saved collectively from Americans on unneeded subscriptions is probably dizzying.
Yeah.
So I would start there, and then, because that's not attacking habits, that's just attacking, that's just being attacking habits is harder. But that goes into, then you're looking at your spending trends and food and lattes and things like that.
Yeah, like if you need 6 trays of black iced teas unsweetened per day. We all know, well, I don't know if all of us do, but most of us know someone.
Yeah, one of the things that I learned early on that I would definitely encourage most people to do is, there's a saying we have in the industry about paying yourself first, which is, most people, when they get their paycheck, they pay their mortgage, they pay their bills, and whatever's left over they spend. Okay. As soon as you get paid, put some money in your savings account. Put some money into a retirement account if that's your goal. Do that first, in addition to paying your bills, and then whatever you have left over, that's what you spend. Okay, and that's a change in habit. I read a really good quote the other day, which is, don't save what is left after spending, but spend what is left after saving. And if you can do that, you can really begin to change your habits financially for the better. But if you're in this habit of, I get this money, I pay my bills, I've got X dollars left, okay, well, that's what I can spend. That's a spending habit that probably needs to be changed a little bit.
I think too, something that I say sometimes when people, because you want to tell people to save, and you tell people to save 10% or whatever you tell them to do. A lot of people can't do that. They can't. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. You don't understand. I can't save any money. My question always is then, if your boss told you today that you have to take a 10% pay cut or you're fired, which one would you do? And we all know that we would take the 10% pay cut until we could find a better paying job, right? So just pay yourself. That's essentially the same thing. Pay yourself, take a 10% pay cut to save that money until you can find a job that then you can save 10% of that income. And it will be, and the second thing would be, when you get a raise, don't upgrade your lifestyle to match your raise. Just take the raise and pocket the money, right? If you get a raise on your hourly wage or whatever the case may be, don't treat that as an upgrade in lifestyle or a new car or a new whatever. Treat that as just bonus money that you get to just squirrel away.
Yeah. It's I learned this probably too late after getting into real estate. Pay yourself first. I'd get a commission check and I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna go buy some leads. You can't do that. You got to pay yourself first. It's amazing the way that I think about things now today than I did 7 years ago when I first got into this business. And I just want to slap myself, sometimes But you got to pay yourself first. You got to put yourself on some sort of salary. This is what I need to survive. This is the amount of money. And this is if you're in real estate or you're a commissioned salesperson or you're self-employed somehow. This is the amount of money I need to survive. I'm going to pay myself this money, and then whatever's left over, I'm gonna reinvest in my business, or I'm gonna put that aside to take the family to Disneyland once the world is normal again. You know, all those things. So pay yourself first. You know, if you've never thought about that or how to do that, you know, talk to someone like Chase or Julie. You know, I think that that's one of the best pieces of advice you can have, just to stay financially healthy.
And I think people are, you know, Chase, like you said, people are afraid to look at it, and it is, you know, they run away. The second I even bring the word budgets into a conversation, people are like peacing out.
Right.
It is stressful, but you know, and in a position of in a position of authority in our field, right? Who come to us for advice, they're worried that they're going to be judged. And I can just say that we've seen it all.
Yeah.
We've seen the worst. I personally have been the worst. I mean, I was a single mom, putting myself through school with the worst credit you can possibly imagine, saddled in student loans, and smoking a pack of cigarettes a day that I could not afford. And, you know, that it was bad. And so I've been there, and I know what that looks like, and you can come out of it. So I really wish more people would realize that you're not a freak if you're struggling in that area. A lot of people, the majority of people in the country, do voice concern in that area. So, you know,
one of the things that I've learned is that no matter where you're at, there's probably always someone that if, you know, depending on what your mindset is, there's always someone you're looking at. You're going, man, if I could just have that level of success, if I could just be like that person. You know, the reality is almost 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, that person was where you are today.
100%.
Like, you know, they've been through what you're going through. You know, success leaves clues behind, and you can look at that trajectory and learn from it. I think that, you know, I'm same boat, Julie. You know, younger. You know, I'm still responsible with a lot of things, but when I was younger, I mean, just a mess. You know, didn't save any money. I got my buddy, my good friend Sean. You know, this guy has saved, I think, 20% of his paycheck since we were in high school, no matter what. I mean, I wish I had that discipline when I was younger. I save now, and what I learned was, you know, once I start saving and putting that money away, I don't even remember that it was there. So I live, you know, without it. But if you feel like you can't do it, or you've got, you know, you're living paycheck to paycheck or whatever there is, the first step is just starting, and you learn that, you know, you can do it. You really can. Even if it's $20 a month, you got to start somewhere. That drop in the bucket will eventually fill the bucket.
Yeah.
And nobody was born with a budget. We all started somewhere.
Yeah.
But literally everyone you speak to had to learn what money and budgets looked like for them. And, you know, everybody started somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, and I've seen a lot of different cases, but regardless of how much someone was paycheck to paycheck, I've never looked at someone's spending and said, okay, no, you can't save. There's always a way that's been able to be figured out. And the one thing I can say is, because we don't have teachers about money, if you're going through this, teach your children about it too, because you just kind of compound the problem if you're not teaching them about money, because obviously we know schools and things like that aren't going to do it. So if you're not tackling that issue, you know, for yourself, you know, I hate to say this, but do it for your kids as well, because it's going to take a lot of stress off of you, but you're also going to teach them something very invaluable that you yourself probably wish you had taught, you know, at their age. Yeah. So, you know, hiding from it doesn't do any good. You got to confront it eventually. I understand if people are scared and they don't want to, but it's never as bad as you seem. most of the meetings I come out with that are focused on that, they're like, wow, that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. It's like, yeah, it's really not a big deal.
Yep.
I think it's all about getting the information and getting the knowledge from someone that knows about it. I mean, every time we walk out of a buyer consult with a new first-time home buyer, and we explain the entire process to them and reassure them that, hey, you don't have to remember any of this. That's exactly why I'm here. I'm going to make sure you listen to these deadlines. I'm going to make sure that the right people are hired for the right things so that we get you on the path to homeownership. And it's one of the best feelings when they walk out of that meeting and they're walking away and they're talking to each other. They're going, wow, this is going to be easier than I thought it would be. Mm-hmm. But if you just tap into the experts or tap into the people that know about what you're trying to accomplish, I mean, it makes things a lot easier. I think we got some stuff in the Q&A. Savannah, is there anything in there?
Yeah, I'll read it so you can answer. No, just kidding. No, I'm just joking. Let's see.
I can't toggle back and forth. I got this little laptop screen, so.
Okay, so National Association of Realtors was tackling what they call an affordability crisis before all this. Nationwide, opportunities for first-time home buyers and working families are disappearing for them to enter the real estate market as homeowners. NAR, the National Association of Realtors, and feds called on grassroots efforts for local communities to tackle the affordability problem. In Washington, legislative burden can be anywhere up to $30,000 passed from builders down to the consumers. How important is access to home ownership, and what are we going to do to improve those opportunities?
That's you.
No, I've read it. No, you gotta get it. No, home ownership is definitely important, and I think, it's so tough. There's no perfect answer, and it's such a complex challenge. But I think overall, it all starts with setting a goal and developing a plan. And just kind of like what you guys were talking about with a budget is if you have a goal of buying a home, it can be hard to go out and look in this market and be like, gosh, if I would have bought 3 years ago. But just think, if you don't buy now, you may be saying that again in another 3 years, And so if you want to be a homeowner, and, I think that's one of the greatest opportunities to build wealth in our country, is to set the goal and start to talk to the people like an agent and a financial broker or mortgage broker who can really help build that plan. And for some people, that may look like you're ready to go. You've got good income, you've got good credit, and you're ready to do it. And for other people, that may look like a 2-year journey. But the biggest thing is until you really look at your budget and you really start to have those conversations and develop those relationships with your kind of those experts in the field, and really start to put together a timeline and a plan. I think almost anyone at any point in their financial, whether you're not where you want to be at income wise or not. I think developing that plan really can help you get there.
Yeah.
There's a piggyback on that. I really do want to emphasize talking to someone in the field, in the housing industry, mortgage or real estate, before you start trying to get ready. I talk to a lot of people who they know they want to buy a home within the next, whatever time frame. So they start doing things that they think they should do. And a lot of the time, it's not the best things to do. And I've come upon lots of people who have said, I saved up all this money, I paid off all this debt, now I want to buy a house. And I'm like, well, I wish we would have met sooner, because I could have told you what to strategically pay off or pay down, and then to save some funds for down payment, and do it the right way, the way that makes the most sense, that will benefit you in the long run. And it's always a bummer when they come to me after, and then there's nothing we can do to change our current situation. But we could have, made just a few different choices that would have made a big impact on not just their ability to buy, but for how much and their financing.
Totally. Jason, do you want to add on to that?
So the question at the end was, at the end of all that was exactly, what was that again?
How important is access to home ownership, and what are we going to do to improve those opportunities?
Who asked that?
One of your team members, DJ.
It is super, super important. And I think we all know that. I think we know homeownership is important, period. You know, you are, and I think there's a lot of people attending right now that know these things, but I'll just say it out loud. You know, you want to pay rent and pay someone else's mortgage, and then also have your rent go up probably almost every year, if not, well, maybe every year, whatever. Your rent's going to go up. It's never going to go down, right? Or you want to pay your own mortgage, lock in your payment for 30 years. Because as 30 years goes by, you make you know, $70,000 today. In 30 years or 20 years or 15 years, you're going to be making more than that probably. So your mortgage payment's staying the same. You're increasing your wealth. You're paying down your mortgage, so you're getting equity in your home, which is a huge asset. And so you're building your personal wealth, your personal legacy. Your home, you know, can be part of your retirement plan. There's a lot of different ways to think about this, and I don't want to open up a huge can of worms, but home ownership is super important, and you got to figure out. I believe that you need to figure out a way to do it. You know, there are different debates out there on whether or not you should invest in real estate, and those debates can happen all day long. But the one thing that I believe 100% true to the core is that you should own the home you live in, or at least be paying toward it so that you're getting equity and financial freedom and wealth and building your legacy. So if you're in a situation right now where you don't think it's possible for you, and believe me, I was there. In my 20s, the CEO of my old company was like, you need to buy a house. You need to buy a house. Why aren't you buying a house? You know, I made a pretty decent amount of money in my 20s doing what I did in cell phones, and I should have bought a house. I don't know what I was thinking, you know, in my early 20s. And, but I remember telling him, I said, it's too intimidating to me. I don't understand it. And for me, I'm a control freak. And so when I don't understand something, I'm not going to do it unless I commit to going and learning. And back then I was too busy doing other things. I didn't want to learn how to buy a house. So it's super important is the bottom line answer. And there are ways to accomplish it, even if you feel like it's not right for you. I had a client that wanted to buy a house, took him 2 years, literally 2 years to get him into a house, but he was patient and diligent, and he did the things that he needed to do, and I stayed in touch with him through that whole time, and we got him into a home. So it's possible.
All right. Question. So it says challenge. Question for Savannah. What are you telling your active buyers? Have you had to tell any buyers that maybe this isn't the right time for them to buy? So, so what am I telling active buyers? Well, it really depends on, you know, who that person is and what their goals are. I would say, for the most part, someone who is looking for a home to occupy and to live in, you know, I think it's still a good time to buy. It's, you know, you may be able to find some opportunity in this, but, you know, in the next 2 weeks, I think it's going to be hard, you know, but I think once we get through this, I think it's definitely still going to be a good time for people who are looking to occupy. Now, you know, maybe if you're an investor, you know, maybe the situation and timing for buying looks different. Not to say that it's not a good time, but again, it just kind of all comes down to what your goals are. Have you had to tell any buyers that maybe this isn't the right time for them to buy? I mean, yes, that is a conversation. I think that regardless of what's going on, it has to be something that makes sense. And ultimately, it's a big decision. It's a big financial decision. And you want to make sure that the decision you're moving forward with is something that you can sustain and feel comfortable with. You know, but yeah, I mean, that's a tough question. So, I mean, it's not the right time for all buyers, but for a lot of buyers, it still is a good time. It just really depends on, you know, what your goals are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it depends on the buyer. You know, if you're an investor, it depends on the price. You know,
Exactly. It just, yeah.
I had a guy call me yesterday, and he's like, "Hey, I was going to go in on this thing," and I said, "Well, remind me what you're getting it for." And it's that's a 2,500 square foot home in a very nice neighborhood in Puyallup. We didn't turn off the ringer, and he's getting it for like 200 grand, and I'm like, "Dude, buy it! Like,
Yeah.
buy that!" You know. But if he was going to say 350, 300, I'm like, I don't know. I'd have to walk through it. But so it just depends on the buyer. I think most of our buyers are telling them, like, look, rates are great. There's no reason not to buy. It just depends on everybody's individual situation.
And it depends on the value for the purpose. You know, I think primary residences, it's such a different thing, but like you said, it's going to depend, you know, if you happen upon a gold mine, you know, that's priced at nothing, then I think it all comes down to value for the purpose of that investment.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the situation I ran into was it was being rented out, but they wanted to ultimately flip it. And so that's challenging given our current situation where people, you know, don't really have a place to go and there's no eviction. And so that could cause delays and, you know, every situation is just so unique and different.
And we run into that all the time in what we do, that, you know, every person has a unique situation. And as agents and financial advisors, we have to learn how to advise on so many different things, because they ask, you know, people ask, what should I do here? And it's like, well, I gotta be careful what I say here, but this is what I've seen in the past. This is my experience. And that's tough. You gotta deal with everybody individually and make sure you have all the right information in front of you so you can make the best decision possible based on the information you have in front of you at that time. Any other questions in the Q&A?
No, I think we're maybe wait, one more maybe. No.
Okay. Well, was there anything on the agenda that we didn't get to that we might want to get to before we wrap this up? I know we went long. I hope there was value here, but I mean, what else do we got, Savannah?
I think we covered pretty much everything. I don't know if folks want to go around and say something that they're optimistic about that kind of will come from all of this, and then we can kind of close out, if that sounds good.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I guess I can start. I mean, I think I have to say, without having all of this go on, I probably would never be on a conversation or a video call with all of you guys. So I think it just shows the community out there, you know, and how even though you've really never met people, it kind of in a way brings us all together and allows us to all know each other. And it's kind of nice to be able to socialize with people because I've been at home for a few days now. So, but I think just generally the community is super strong, and I think that's just going to get stronger over time. So. Anyway, thanks, guys.
It has to be really cool seeing everybody come together. I think I've become so jaded and disillusioned with, you know, the populace at large, especially, you know, coming off of Christmas and everybody's just rude and everything's crazy and you just feel like, ah. And so to see, not to say there haven't been probably people out there during all this, because there have been, but to see more of the compassion and the care and the mercy that people are having for each other, and the really like village-like coming together, especially here in Thurston County. And I think it's just so beautiful and encouraging, because it could be ugly. You know, it could be really ugly, and it hasn't been. It's been really incredible how everybody's come together and tried to maintain positivity, even though there's plenty of negativity to go around on social media. I feel like there's been a lot of just an overall positivity to it.
Yeah.
Mixed in with panic.
Yeah. Chase?
You know, I would agree. I mean, for me, it's interesting because I don't get to do things like this because I pretty much work for myself. So being able to collaborate and coordinate with different people was very interesting and exciting to me, and reaching out to people that I normally, you know, wouldn't get in front of. Both to Savannah and Julie's comments, you know, in a way, sure, you could look at it that things are bad, but you see a lot of the good that's going on, especially right now, because that initial 20 to 30 day panic is kind of dying down. You know, you're kind of getting used to your new normal, and people are really taking this as an opportunity to open up in different ways. And I think that's a great thing. And I think there's going to be a lot of benefits that come from that down the road.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm excited about is I know now there's no question that I will have time to put together that trampoline for my daughter's birthday. About that I wouldn't be able to get home and I'd put it together in a rush. So that's happening now. But seriously, like, I think what's really cool is people care, right? We all care about each other, and what's happening right now is there's a sense of camaraderie and community out there that we don't always get to see it. It's too bad that we don't see it every day, but it's beautiful when we do see it. And you know, I reached out to each one of Savannah and Julia and Chase and said, hey, what do you guys think about this? And you know, they thought it was great, and they saw the opportunity there to provide value back to our community and just give some general advice and get people together. I love collaborating with other people in order to come out the other end better. And I am optimistic. I think that, you know, once everybody's able to leave their houses again, there's going to be a surge. I mean, people are going to have all this pent up, you know, stuff going on. There's going to be some kind of surge. Like, even though business may die down a little bit over the next 2 weeks, once that's over, we're going to be out there, we're going to be showing homes, people are going to be buying, people are going to be selling, we're going to be putting things on the market. And I think that, you know, in this community, you know, we all know small business owners. And if they're closed right now, the minute they're able to open back up, even if I don't need their product or service, I'm going to go there and I'm going to buy it because I care and I want to see them thrive and I want to see them be successful. And I know probably everybody on this panel and everybody that's attended this call and a lot of people in this community are going to do the same thing. And I think that that's just, you know, awesome. And it's one of the reasons that I love being a part of this and doing what I do. So that's all I got. I think that's it, guys. I think we're done, right?
I think that's it.
Woo!
Wrap.
I feel like we need a sequel or something, maybe. All right. Well, I guess I'll end it and say thank you, everybody, for joining in on this. We appreciate it, and maybe we'll do it again. And I think something that would push us to do it again is if we see comments that you think it'd be valuable, or if you message us on social and say that, you know, you'd love to see something like this again, maybe in a week or two. I think we'd all get together and do it again. So thank you. This video was recorded. We're gonna post it on social, and so anybody that missed it that you think might find it valuable, please share it once you see it on our pages. Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye guys.